Hello, my name is Anna Williams, and I chose bison as my species subject. I'm really excited. They're a really interesting species. Why I chose bison is because after I graduate next Friday, I'm moving to Nebraska to work on a bison ranch. So it's kind of my dream position. So that is why I chose bison in the first place. But this presentation will be on the evolution and the phenotypical comparison of the American bison and the European wood bison. So just an introduction, before this paper, I didn't even know that there was two different species of bison still existing, but there is. The European wood bison is very, very rare now, but I'll go into that later. But the evolution of these species is absolutely fascinating. It's long and complex, and there's a lot of theories that go within it. But first, I just wanted to introduce you to the bison if you're not very familiar with bison. They're nomadic grazers and they travel in large herds. The bulls usually leave family herds when they're about 2 or 3 years old, and then they travel around these bachelor herds. Mature bulls are rarely found alone. They're usually in family herds. They reproduce just like other large ungulates. The males are involved in intrasexual selection, so they compete for the females. For the American bison, you are probably more familiar with these ones. They're common in the United States, in the western United States. They were a keystone species for the Great Plain ecosystems. Obviously, there's a lot that has changed. Bison play a critical role in the survival and the history of the American Indians. American bison and the European bison were both hunted to close extinction within the last 2 centuries. Actually, the European bison was hunted to extinction within the wild, but I'll talk about them in a little bit. Now this species has made a great comeback. They've just recently been proclaimed as the nation's national mammal. And they are no longer on the endangered species list, which is pretty exciting. So here we have the historic range and the present range. The historic range, as you can see, is a lot. They covered a large area, but now they are only found in very controlled, small habitats. So the European wood bison, obviously they look pretty similar to American bison, but they are found in Europe and Asia, usually right now really close to the border of it. Wood bison, they were, like I said before, were completely hunted to extinction, but they have been recently reintroduced to a couple countries in Europe. And because they were reintroduced by Poland. It's only because of the country of Poland, that these species even exist. Just like the American bison, they covered a large range across Europe and Eurasia. This is more of a recent herd within the last 200 years. This is where they were confined to. And then on the left, you can see these are the only two wild populations in existence right now. So the evolution of bison is really fascinating. Most of the research of the evolution of bison happened within the Pleistocene era. That's where we find a lot of the Pleistocene megafauna that we see in the fossil records. Bison were first evolved in Eurasia. Eurasia is just the combination of Europe and Asia. So obviously they covered a large mass. They covered mostly northern Eurasia. The first species that they mainly found in the record, and as you can see, it's one of the frozen, it's a frozen fossil, so it tells us a lot, but they call it a steppe bison or a priscus. They were the first main ancestor of the modern bison. These bison in Eurasia, they crossed over the Bering Land Bridge, and they have evidence that this crossing happened quite a lot, back from Eurasia to North America, to Eurasia back to North America. But it was only in North America, since there was such a diverse amount of habitats and niches to fulfill, the evolution spiked, and there were many speciation in general happened really quickly here in North America. North America, like one of the examples, we have the giant horde, the Bison de France. I don't know if that's how you say any of these, but that's my closest guess. But this species was the main species that was ancestor within the North Americas. This is kind of the evolution through North America. All of these were found in North America, and all during the Pleistocene era. One thing that scientists can usually pretty much agree on is that some of these species lived for a very, very long time. Not individually, I mean like as populations. They lived for a very long time, and when they speciated, and other subspecies, they would come and go quite quickly. So there were a few of these that coexisted at the same time, but some of them lasted a lot longer than others. But we're obviously in North America, we ended with bison, and that's really all that we had by the end of the Pleistocene period. So the difference, I wanted to kind of go over the differences real quick of the European wood bison and the American bison. There's a few internal differences, obviously. So the American bison have 15 ribs, while the European wood bison has 14. The European has 5 lumbar vertebrae, and the American has 4. In general, I gave this diagram because you can see the hump differences. The European wood bison is taller and slimmer. They have longer legs, while the American bison are shorter, but they're much more broad, and that goes along right with their hump sizes. This is a cool, interesting thing that I found in the evolution. Why these two animals, their humps evolved differently, is because American bison are much more of a grazer, and so their hump is larger and thicker for those muscles because their head is a lot lower than the European wood bison. So as they're grazing, their hump has to support that large head. While the European wood bison, they are much more of a browser, and so their head is up a lot more, and so their hump is a lot less defined. The picture doesn't give the hump justice. It's a lot smaller than that, a lot more slimmer. Their head is taller, and like I said before, they're very, very slim. So another interesting thing, this is the main phenotypical trait that you can tell the bison apart. So on the larger horn right here, not particularly larger, but the longer horn that sticks out I guess perpendicular to their forehead, that's the European wood bison. The European wood bison, their horns curve out more, and this is because the European wood bison is a lot more aggressive than the American bison, especially when it comes to intersexual selection, when the males are battling each other. So their horns curve out and longer, and so they have more of a physical close combat, male to male. The American bison, their horns just get as large, but they are curved more at the same plane as their skull. Something that's really affected the evolution of these species since they've gone through such a bottleneck event, both species, the American bison and the European wood bison, hybridization has been a problem. You've probably heard of beefalo or catalo. These have happened on accident in nature, for hundreds of years, and they've been on purpose. The hybrids are fertile because their genetic genomes are pretty similar, but this allows those traits to carry on and stay within the populations. So this has been a huge problem in Europe. The European wood bison, they have been hybridized with domestic cattle in hopes of strengthening both sides, so strengthening the domestic cattle's genes and the European wood bison genes. But it's kind of backfired because these genes really do affect the overall phenotypic and genotypic frequencies of the European wood bison. So actually there's only a very, very few wood bison left that has the pure genetics. They're actually all descended from less than 12 individuals. So they are an extreme bottleneck. The conclusion, I hope that you enjoyed and learned something about this presentation. These species are fascinating to me. During the Pleistocene era, that's where we have much of our information. Most of the information is actually in the Pleistocene era. And by the end, we are left with the American wood bison. The American bison and the European wood bison. Much research still needs to be done, especially those transitional species before the steppe bison. And even there's still a lot of connections and a lot of speculations of the connections of these different individual species. Here is my work cited, and I hope that if you've never seen a bison, go to Yellowstone. We're only less than 2 hours away from Yellowstone. Hope you have a great day. Hope this presentation was entertaining. And good luck with finals. Bye.